Alright everyone, it's time for a really funny video here. Link in the description, archived of course. Always use archive.today, especially when sending news tips to your favorite creators. They can take the 2 seconds that it takes for the archive to load. It's perfectly fine. This is hilarious because this article is propaganda. Now, what it is about how the GOP calls everything it doesn't like socialism. Now, let's pick this apart. First and foremost, socialism is opposed by a broad section of U.S. society, the vast majority of people, especially of voting age. Most of them are not die-hard partisan Republicans. Most independents oppose socialism, poll after poll. Certainly Marxism, which is socialism. Socialism is just Marxism light, just to be clear. And even a significant proportion of Democrats look sourly upon the concept of socialism. If you rebrand it and call it social democracy, more of them are in favor of it, even though you're giving them the same thing. It's like if you say, you have a product and you say, hey, here's bread. People are like, okay, well, bread is boring. Now you take that and you give it a nice star-spangled package and say, really cool, awesome, amazing, fortified bread. Well, it's the same bread, but more people will probably think positively of it. There's a reason why we labeled it the Patriot Act. There's a reason why clean coal came into common parlance. There's a reason why Antifa pretends to still be fighting fascism. Anyway, leftoids are shrieking about this, calling it a conspiracy theory when we call socialism socialism. I would say this. There are already considerable elements of socialism in U.S. society, which is unfortunate. We should be scaling back all of them. We already have a massive welfare state. We already have high taxation, especially on businesses, and we penalize the self-employed explicitly. We already have billions and billions of pages of regulations at the state, local, and federal level. At what point can you say that society is no longer particularly capitalistic and that the trappings of capitalism, broadly applied mainly only to large corporations, is the only reason the economy hasn't collapsed Venezuela style? Than the fact that it's not a monocultured economy, so it has a little bit more structural integrity. And that's the reality. The sad fact is the United States has not operated under full capitalism in over a century. That's why we're not growing as quickly anymore. That's why we have more diplomatic problems than we had before. Drawing ourselves into all of these bizarre trade relations through globalism has helped only marginally. Yeah, okay, you can get your avocados cheaper now, so you can have your avocado toast. That's wonderful. The problem is that it gives foreign companies leeway, and foreign states, therefore, and state capitalist systems, potentially some sort of force over U.S. policy. That's not a good thing. It's like what we did with China. With China, we opened them up to trade and travel with the West. We figured that we could use the Coca-Cola teat and they would magically stop being communists. Well, they abandoned hardline communist economic policies in part. Of course, it's still technically a facade, still socialistic in nature, but they remain just as authoritarian. Meanwhile, China got more money because they had that sub-free market mentality, and now they use that money as leverage over U.S. companies to try to create a social credit score system in the Western Hemisphere, to try to undermine Silicon Valley, especially by making it possible for the U.S. tech firms to screw themselves with too many rules and regulations, partially through cultural subversion, in order for TikTok to grow, and things like that, so China can make even more money. It's all a cash grab. I mean, it's literally a form of economic imperialism, but people, by and large, are too stupid to realize that. But anyway, a lot of the policies that are being proposed, for instance, right now, that's the sum and substance of this article, is the Republicans are shrieking about socialism with the infrastructure deal, stimulus, COVID, things like that. But it is socialism. You're talking about a multi-trillion-dollar enormous expansion of Gibbs in the U.S. economy. You're talking about free community college, which, by the way, won't help people that already are out of college, so screw you, millennials, yet again. It won't even help most of Gen Z at this point. It's like looking forward to helping Gen Alpha. And I say help in the loosest possible way, so the taxpayers will pay for that. Supposedly, this will all, by the way, be paid for by the super rich, but it'll actually be paid for by the working and middle class. This is historically the case for the last century. Just watch. People will get buyer's remorse even more, but by then it'll be too late, and it'll be really, really funny to say, I told you so. Universal pre-K, so you get an extra year of indoctrination for your kids while you pretend to love them, but you drop them off at school, and then you go and do your own thing. And then you'll wonder why they're messed up. why they've been indoctrinated. Yeah, it'll be interesting. Expansions to Medicare, Medicaid, expansions to subsidies for public colleges in general, centralized spending for highways, bridges, and stuff like that. But that's socialism. We've already got a system which leans heavily to the left. I think about it. If you want to put up a lemonade stand, you can end up getting fined because you didn't have a license to sell food. Little kids have been, had a sheriff walk up on them and tell them to fucking get the lemonade stand out of there. And, you have to expect the FBI to show up, guns drawn, expecting like a food service violation or something. That's not capitalism. That's not what that actually means. I love it when people talk about late-stage capitalism. Oh, all the problems in the West are the result of capitalism. No, they're not. They're the result of denigrated capitalism. We've been heaping more and more leftism on top of it for years and years. At some point, it collapses. Well, it's not capitalism's fault. That's managed to keep the whole charade going. The problem is all of the welfare spending and big government and militarism and all this horse shit that you've piled onto it. Debt spending, inflation, and everything else the globalists seek. At some point, it's funny that anyone would have a problem with actually calling this socialism. If anything, the Republicans are cucks and don't go far enough. It's like with gun control. They look at gun control and they say, well, no, we don't need any bans on the AR-15, bans on expanded magazines, high-capacity magazines, which is a meaningless and non-legal term, by the way. It's just Washington parlance. But they never say, hey, let's go back and repeal the gun control that's already there because the NFA was unconstitutional to begin with, which it is. They never do that. They're cucks, by and large, 90% of them. I get a handful of people that know what they're doing, like Rand Paul, to some extent like the Trump populist crowd. But really, like the rhino cons, they don't want to touch the issue. All they do is slow down the spread of communism in the Western Hemisphere, but they're not doing much to stop it because, of course, they're getting donated to, by and large, by the same companies that are pushing Beijing's lies. That's the problem. The problem is we have socialism. Way too much of it, by the way. We need to actually rescind much of the leftism that the United States and other Western nations already have. I find it funny still when Bernie rants about the Nordic model without realizing the business restrictions in Scandinavia are considerably less than in the United States. They're more capitalistic. Yeah, okay, so the welfare state is capable of being paid for if you have hyper-capitalistic business policies. Well, who would have thunk? Capitalism works. It even works. Capitalism's so great, it's even able to uphold elements of socialism. The problem starts when there's more socialism than capitalism. Who would have thought that was possible? You mean people want to get ahead? People don't want to be taxed into irrelevance? Under policies that invariably don't actually affect the billionaire class anyway. They only affect people that are, small business owners. On paper, a 100-acre farm is worth a lot of money. Makes the farmer look awfully wealthy now, doesn't it? Too bad he has to borrow huge amounts of debt every year to get his Monsanto seed, hope that the crop is good, and then maybe he makes a middling salary, maybe makes $100K a year working, literally 7 days a week. I wouldn't call that exactly becoming rich. It's not like owning a plantation back in the 1820s. It's not like being a Rothschild or a steel baron or something. It's called working. Socialism is socialism. It's true that some people in the GOP will label anything under the sun communism if they don't like it. This, though, is basically just the political masquerade counterpart of people on the left calling everything they don't like Nazism, racist, problematic in some way, far right and extreme. That's the same thing, and this sort of pandering has gone on forever. But let's call socialism what it is. It's socialism. It's not progressivism. It's not social democracy. It's not a marginal new tax that'll help a lot of little kids and orphans. No, it's socialism. At the end of the day, that's just what it is. There's no other label to give it. That's about all. Peace out.